In this video, I want to talk about the concepts of creating classes and objects. It's something new that we haven't covered before. We've done strings, we've done integers, we've done arrays, we've done booleans, but we've never actually talked about this idea of creating classes and objects. Now, a class is basically a template that defines the structure of an object. So we can think of a class as something that describes an entity or a whole thing, if you like. So, for example, a person is a class, and there are common attributes that a person has, such as height, hair colour, eye colour, for example, name, age. And also there are common things that humans can do, such as go for a walk or drive a car, for example, and they're all functions or activities that a user can perform. So we can think of a class as the sort of template that defines the thing, and an object is an instance of that thing. So you can think of K as being an instance of a person, and I have a height, I have a hair colour, I have a name, an age, so on and so forth. Now we've actually come across this idea of using objects before. We've just never really talked about it too much. So when we've used the turtle library in the past, we've created an instance of the turtle object. So the turtle object, somebody in the turtle library has created a turtle class. It's got all these properties and methods associated with it. And when we create an instance of that turtle class called Adrian, we start assigning some values to Adrian. So, for instance, we give Adrian the shape circle, and we ask Adrian to move forward 100 paces. So, shut that down there. So we'll just run that, and we can see we've got a instance of Adrian when it gets going. I must apologise, there's a train going in the background. Okay, so this is Adrian. He's an instance of my turtle object, and I give him the shape circle, and I moved him 100 pixels across the screen. So what I want to do in this lesson is actually show you how to create your own classes and instantiate those classes or instantiate those objects to create instances of those objects and do some stuff with them. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to my Python shell and create a new file. And in this file, I'm going to create a class. Now in Python, we create a class by typing in the word class. And I'm going to create a question class because I'm going back to my question and answers scenario. So whenever you create a class, you have to pass in the thing that's going to be the object. Actually, I probably should have kept that turtle one open to give you a let me do it like this. No. We'll open up that turtle one to help me compare and show you what I'm doing. Okay, so this is, when you call this turtle class here, you pass in the object, which is essentially Adrian, the instance of the object. So this bit here is essentially like what this line of code will call when it runs the class. And the second thing we need to do is we need to initialize our class. So it doesn't really become an instance if it doesn't have an object associated with it. So we've got to initialize the class. And there's a sort of predefined function in Python, it's already written for you, called init. And within init, you have to pass the object, which I've called self. And for our particular object, we're going to have two attributes. We're going to have question and answer. So regardless of how many attributes you've got, you need to pass in the value of those attributes when you init your class. Well, certainly that's how we're going to initialize our variables in this example. So just like any function, put your colon on the end. So now I can say, give my object, which is self, assign the attribute question, the value that is passed in here. So my question becomes whatever question is passed in here. And also assign myself answer to be whatever answer is passed in here. Okay, so that's just set up my class. And that doesn't really do anything at the minute. So if we just, we'll just do a little test. I'll create an instance of a question, and then we'll output the value of that question to the screen somewhere. See if I can remember. I can't quite remember how to do this, so it might take a couple of goes. So we create an instance of the question object, and we give the first parameter, so that this is the question object, and the first parameter is this one here, so we're going to give that a value here. And for our answer, I'm going to give it the answer 5. Okay, so now I've got an instance of a question, which has got the question, how many sides does a pentagon have, and an answer of 5. And I can't remember, I think I have to create, we'll just try this out. So we'll just try and print the question out. I don't think this will work, but we'll give it a go. Question. I might have to create, like, assign it to an instance, but I'll describe that in a minute. And we will save this somewhere. We'll just overwrite this one here. Yeah, fine. So it doesn't like my first line of code. Oh, I forgot to put a colon on there. Same as when you define a function, you've got to stick a colon on the end there. So let's just see what happens here. Yeah, it doesn't understand question as an object. Spelled all that way. I think we have to do my question equals this question, and then it is actually my question that we output here. So there you go. So what happened was I created an object called question, give it the value how many sides does a pentagon have for the question property, and the value 5 for the answer property, but I hadn't created an instance of that question class. Okay, so that's an instance of that question class, and likewise I can access any of the properties within my question class just by using the instance of the question and just doing a dot and then typing out the name of the property that I want to get the value for. Okay, so that typed out 5, which is my answer here, which is great. So what I actually want to do is be able to ask the user this question and get the answer to that question from the user. So what I'll do is I'm going to create a method within my question class, and that method is going to be called askQuestion. And I'm going to pass in myself again, so I'll pass this in again. And just like we did in the last video, we will get the user's guess by using the input function, and we will type out the question. So this time, because I'm not printing it out down here, I'm actually saying when I create an instance of this question and I ask this question method, I want you to get the question of this self object here. I know this is a bit confusing, so it might be better if you ask us to go through this with you in class to describe it a bit better if you start getting a little bit pickled about now, which is fine. It's difficult. It's a new concept. I'm quite happy to answer questions on a one-to-one basis for this. If you're viewing this online and you don't come to class, you'll have to respond to the comments and I'll try and give you a more detailed description. Okay, so then just like in the last video, we need to check to see if the user's guess is the same as our object's answer. So remember, I had to wrap this strut around because this is a number and not a string. We can't compare a string to a number without converting the number to a string. So I'll just print correct. Actually, I've used double quotes there, so I'll use double quotes here and here. It doesn't really matter, but I just like to keep consistent whichever approach I take. Okay, else print incorrect. Give it a capital I. Oh, and I forgot my colon again. I know I'm always doing that. So now what I can do is I can call this method within my function. So instead of doing this, I'll just comment that out for now. We can do ask my question. So my question dot ask question. And then just open and close brackets. So now what this is going to do is it's going to call this function, it's going to pass in itself, it's going to ask this question of this object here, which is clearly this one here, and the answer it's going to get from itself here. So let's run this now. Oh, bit of lag because I'm recording. So click OK. How many sides does a pentagon have? I'm going to type in 2, which is clearly wrong. So that's incorrect. So let's try it with the correct answer now. How many sides does a pentagon have? 5, and that is correct. So that's how you create a class in Python, and how you create an instance of that class. And we could have another question here. So if we just copy this code over, and we'll have a second question. Whoops, not there. So I'll create a second question. I'll call it my question 1. This one will be what colour signifies danger, and the answer this time will be a string, and that will be red. So now I can run this to ask the first question, and then run it and then get it to ask the second question. Oops, this is my question 2, my question 1, not 2. My question 1 to ask question, open and close bracket. So what should happen is this first question's asked, and then it should go down to here, create a new instance of that my question 1, and then ask the question for my question 1 as well. So we'll just run this and give it a go. How many sides does a pentagon have? 5. Correct. So then it asks the question of this object here. What colour signifies danger? Red. Correct. That's how you do create classes and instantiate objects in Python. So we'll just have a quick recap, and I'll add some comments in here. So this first line of code here is creating a question class. Each time we create an instance of this class, sorry, I'm going off the track here. We pass the object to the class to be initialized. That's this object bit here. And then we initialize the class passing in any attribute values we might want to assign on initialization. We might want to assign them later, but I've just done it on initialization for this example. So set the value of the question property to the value of the question variable. Put all constant. And set the value of the answer property of the question to the value of the answer. And then next, going off the map a bit, to ask the question, we need to pass in, or we need to get the instance of the object that is calling this method. And that's a bit misleading, because when we call ask question, we don't pass anything in there. There's nothing in there. But the fact is that the self is taking the instance of the object when this method's called. So that's how it knows which one of these questions is currently being used. And then we get the user's guess. User's guess from the input, ask the or get the question property from the current object, the self. And then, just like before, check the user's guess against the value that is stored for the object answer. And then just use your print statement. And here we're creating an instance of the question object called my question, and we're assigning it some values. Assign the my question attribute question the value provided, and assign the my question attribute. Bring this along so you can see it on your screen. It's alright going off my screen, but you can't scroll, which is really frustrating when you're watching videos. My question attribute answer the value 5. And last thing we do is call the method ask question of the my question object. And there you have it. That's how to create a class with some properties or attributes, pass in some values for those attributes, create a method on that class, create an instance of that class, which is an object, and pass it in some values. And that's the end of this tutorial.